What's up guys, my name is Tony, and today I'm going to give you a quick and painless introduction to Quickshell. Quickshell is a Qt-based toolkit for building custom Wayland desktop components. It basically lets you code your own bars, widgets, and Shell UI using QML, which is Qt's declarative markup language. In future videos, I'll cover creating a wallpaper manager, building a desktop overlay, and making a screen lock widget. But for now, we're just going to start with the fundamentals by building a functional status bar step by step. Alright, let's jump right into it. I am going to be on NixOS today, so we can just add Quickshell to our package list and we're done. But if you are on a legacy distro such as Arch or Fedora, you can head over to the Quickshell documentation or consult your local package manager to see if Quickshell is available. Alright, and we're going to be using Hyprland today, and we're going to show the use case in which Quickshell can be a replacement to Waybar for Hyprland. This also works on Sway, but the API is slightly different for Sway, and I think a lot of you guys use Hyprland, so this might be more valuable for you guys. So I'm jumping into my NixOS Hyprland setup here, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to go straight to my home.nix file and simply add Quickshell to the packages list and close that out, and immediately NixOS rebuild switch, which is my alias here, and there we go. Now we should have access to Quickshell here. QS is the default command for Quickshell, and as it says here, we cannot find a default config or Shell.qml file in any valid config path, which is exactly what we'd expect. So now that we've installed Quickshell, to use it, we need to create a Shell.qml file. So let's make a Quickshell directory like so here. We'll do mkdir.config Quickshell, and then we'll go ahead and change directory into that. And in here, we're going to create a Shell.qml file. So we're going to create our hello world example here, and this is coming straight from the Quickshell documentation, which I'll provide in a link below the subscribe button. But every Quickshell configuration is going to start with these imports. We're going to be pulling in Quickshell for the core stuff and Qt Quick for basic UI elements such as text and rectangle. And we are going to be using floating window as our root element, and this is just a regular floating window. It doesn't dock to any edges or reserve any screen space. It's going to be set at 200 by 100 pixels here. And then we're going to be adding a text element, which is pretty self-explanatory. The anchors.centerInParent portion is QML's layout system. It just centers the text inside the parent container. Alright, so once we've completed that file, we'll go ahead and save and quit that file. And we can just run QS here, which is going to be an alias to Quickshell, and I'm going to preemptively apologize for a flashbang warning because this is going to be some white background here. But there you go. It pulls in that Quickshell file we just made, and it just prints hello Quickshell in that rectangle that we expected. We'll go ahead and quit that here. Alright, so hello world is interesting, and that's cool, but let's actually create sort of a bar that docks at the top of the screen here. And again, this is coming straight from the documentation here. Alright, so I've completed this here and I'm going to go ahead and explain it now. So for the empty bar here, we're going to need to import Quickshell.Wayland, and we're going to be using that for panel window, which is our root element instead of floating window. And since this is Wayland specific, we need this import. The panel window actually docks straight to an edge and allows you to specify in the settings here. And then adding the implicit height here, that's going to give us that 30 pixel tall bar. Obviously we can add the color and the text here. So we can go ahead and save and quit this file here. And let's go ahead and run that. And there we go. We got the bar correctly pinned where we want it. My first bar, subscribe to Tony, by the way. And it's displaying that information that we wanted. So yeah, let's go ahead and move on to a more meaningful use case. So for the rest of this tutorial, I do want to kill Waybar here so we can demonstrate the functionality of the Quickshell bar a little bit better. So let's go ahead and do that here. I'm just going to type pkill Waybar. Now we're barless. Oh no, don't worry about it. We're going to add our own bar. So the first thing in an actual functioning bar that we want is the ability for the bar to talk to our window manager and let us know what workspace we're on or which tag number we're on. So we're going to add that to our bar. And we have access to the Quickshell Hyprland documentation here. So we're going to be using a lot of that today, namely the Hyprland Workspace Qt object. So we can actually leverage a lot of these attributes here. And that's one of the things I like most about Quickshell is that its documentation is very, very dialed. So for workspaces, we're going to want to import quickshell.hyprland command and qtquick.layouts. That's going to be for the IPC access and for the row layout. And this is going to be inside the panel window object. We're going to use this row layout object. And this is just going to be helpful for us to arrange the workspaces horizontally. And we are going to leverage this repeater. It takes a model, in this case, just the number 9, and then creates that many copies of whatever's inside. And each copy will get an index variable. So this is very much like a for loop here. And this will allow us to basically create 9 workspaces. Now, here's where we're going to start to leverage Hyprland's Quickshell library here. For each workspace number, we're looking up the actual workspace from the window manager within Hyprland workspaces.values.find. And this will give us live data when workspaces change. The bar will update automatically. And then we can also check if it's the active workspace using Hyprland.focused workspace. Using those variables from above, we can set the color logic, which is pretty straightforward. If it is the active workspace, we're going to set the color to cyan using this ternary. And then if it's not the active workspace, we're actually just going to check if the workspace has anything on it. But this nested ternary will basically say if it's not active, but there is something on it, we're going to make it a lighter blue. And then if it's muted, we're going to put gray. So we also want to make sure that each workspace is clickable because that's pretty important for your bar. So we're going to use this mouse area Quickshell object here, and we're going to leverage hyprland.dispatch, which will send a command to Hyprland. So clicking on 3 here, for example, will run workspace 3. And lastly, we'll add an item here just to act as a spacer that pushes everything to the left. And with that, we should be good to go. We'll save and quit that file, and we'll test that with just QS here. And there we go. Looks like we've got a functioning bar here. Let's see if we switch to workspace 2 here with super 2. There it is. We've got access to the second workspace, and we do see it is highlighted in cyan. And all of the empty workspaces are gray, which is good. And you can tell that workspace number 1 has a window on it. So yeah, this is a super minimal bar, but I mean, it exists and it's functional for me. Perfect. All right, let's go ahead and add a widget to this bar. A big component of a lot of people's bars is to display some system stats in the top right corner. So let's go ahead and walk through how to do some of that with Quickshell. We're going to leverage the IO library here for the process type. Now, before we jump straight into adding some processes, I think it's important to define some of these variables at the top because we're going to be repeating them a lot, the colors and the font family here. So we can do that with the property tag. So let's create a CPU widget here, and then we need to initialize some of the CPU variables here. We're going to make the CPU usage 0, the CPU idle 0, and then the CPU total 0. So we can actually modify them with our CPU process widget. And here it is. So it's going to be a process type, and we're going to make the ID CPU proc. And the command here is just going to be get the head of the proc stat file. So as we could see, if we run that right now, we're going to get a lot of information about our CPU. So we just need that first line of that file, and then we could parse it with Quickshell. So once we've defined the command, let's go ahead and set up the split parser. The split parser is attached to standard out, which calls onRead for each line of output. So in this onRead data function here, what we're going to do is we're going to be parsing the first line of that proc stat file, which contains the CPU time counters. So we're going to grab columns 4 and 5 for idle time, and then slice and reduce to sum up columns 1 through 8 for the total CPU time. This is going to give us a delta between idle and total time, which we can use to calculate the actual CPU usage percentage. And if this is something that's a little bit too complicated for you, you can check out Mr. Beast's channel. I think he's got something a little bit more entertaining. And then we need to set up a timer block here so we can tell the CPU process when to update. And since the CPU usage updates periodically, we're going to fire this every 2 seconds and then rerun the widget. So 2000 milliseconds, and then repeat true so that it keeps going forever. And there we go. So let's combine all this and take a look at the file. All right, so we've added those colors to the root here of that panel window so that we can repeatedly reuse them as variables. And the fonts, change that font size to 18. And we've initialized these CPU properties. All right, there's that parser we made, and then there's the timer. And we're just gonna put all of this information above the row layout block that we made before. And I've replaced the colors with the variables that we've created here. And then just add this text block at the end after that spacer widget we made. It's just gonna be CPU : CPU usage plus percentage. We'll make it yellow and we will make it bold. And yeah, should be good to go. So let's save and quit that file. And let's run Quickshell here. And there we go. We've got a bar here with workspace indicators, and we've got a CPU widget. So the next step here is going to be adding more widgets and maybe add the layout indicator. All right, so we definitely want more widgets here. And we can add a memory widget in a similar fashion here. This is an overview of my memory widget. It just runs free, and then it'll grep mem from that free command and then parse that data into the final result, which is what we want. It's going to be the amount of used memory over the total as a percentage. So since we're just running shell commands here, you can really create any widget you want. So anything you want to track like battery or network, it's all going to be doable with a shell command and a parser. So we would just need to add that to the timer block as well. And then something like a clock would be very similar to that, but we would leverage Qt's format datetime function here, and it'll be pretty easy to add. We don't actually need to do any shell commands or parsing for that. And as you can see, these kind of all follow the same pattern. It's going to be use a process to run a command, use the split parser to parse the standard output, and then add it to the timer to refresh it periodically, and then render text to display it. So that's it. That's every single widget is going to follow this pattern. So here I've got that memory process, and I'll show you what that does. Let's type free pipe grep mem here. We've got this memory information here. So this is the total in kilobytes. So it's going to be around 16 gigabytes. And then this is the amount that's being used. So that'll be about 1 gigabyte. And we just want a percentage here of the used over the total. So it's pretty simple. And we've added it to that timer block. And in between the memory widget and the CPU widget, we're going to want to add a spacer here. And we can use the rectangle type, width 1 and height 16. We'll go ahead and make that the muted color that we defined at the top here, which is the Tokyo Night background color. So let's save and quit that file. And let's just run it to see what we're working with. Yeah, and as you can see, we've got the clock, the memory as a percentage, and the CPU as a percentage, and the workspaces. So this is looking pretty good. And it's relatively easy to set up. So since we're using Hyprland today, let's go ahead and make sure that Hyprland runs Quickshell on start instead of WayBar. Let's open that file, hyprland.conf. We can just change WayBar here to Quickshell. And what I've done is I've actually pulled in my complete Shell.qml, which I've been working on for a while here. It's got everything we just went over and then a little bit of extra stuff such as layout indicators. And then also I've got an image on the top left, but I'll include this in my dot files in a link below the subscribe button. And you can feel free to tinker with this yourselves. But for now, let's go ahead and run Quickshell and disown so that we can quit this terminal and Quickshell won't stop. And there we go. We've got our full Quickshell layout here. Got the Tony, by the way, picture in the top left. We've got the widgets that we like to normally use. And we've got that purple underline to indicate which workspace we're under. And if we toggle from tiled to floating, we can see that update in the layout indicator, which is good. But yeah. All right, guys, this was very much a cursory introduction to Quickshell. And we're definitely going to expand on this later with something such as a wallpaper manager or a screen locker or what have you. But I think getting a bar up and running on Quickshell is probably what most people want to start with. So I've went ahead and done that. As always, thanks so much for checking out the video. If you'd like to see any Linux or free and open software related content, please just drop a comment and I will put it in the pipeline. And I cannot end the video without an obligatory Neofetch.